When Emily was 12, her parents decided to leave the busy city behind and start again in a quiet little town. They found an old wooden house, more than 100 years old, sitting at the end of a peaceful street surrounded by tall trees. To everyone else, it was just another old home. But the moment Emily stepped inside, she felt something different, something she couldn't explain. A soft, strange feeling, as if the house was quietly watching her. On their first night, while Emily was unpacking boxes in her new bedroom, a cold breeze brushed the back of her neck. But the windows were closed. She turned around quickly. Nothing was there. She tried to ignore it and got ready for bed. But as she lay down, she felt an unusual presence in the room. Not dangerous, but not normal either. It felt like someone else was there with her. Just before she fell asleep, Emily heard a sound. It was soft, almost a whisper. A slow, breathy voice, as if someone was trying to say her name. Her eyes opened wide. She sat up quickly and looked around the dark room. But she saw nothing, only the quiet shapes of furniture in the moonlight. Still, she knew what she heard. A voice, close to her bed. The next morning at breakfast, she told her parents what happened. They laughed gently and said the house was old, and old houses make strange noises all the time. Emily tried to believe them. She really did. But the whisper, it didn't sound like the house settling. It sounded intentional, like someone trying to reach her. During the day, everything seemed normal. The house felt warm. The sunlight filled every corner and the quiet town felt safe. But when the sun began to set, the atmosphere changed. The shadows stretched across the halls. The air grew heavier, and Emily started to notice the house didn't make random sounds. The sounds seemed to follow her, step by step. One evening, while Emily was organizing things in the living room, she heard it again, a soft, trembling sound behind her. This time it was clearer, a faint breath, like someone trying to speak but too weak to finish the words. Emily froze. She slowly stepped back and whispered, "Is someone there?" Silence. But she felt it again, the heavy feeling of being watched. That night, Emily decided she needed answers. She grabbed a small flashlight and walked through the dark hallway. Every wooden step creaked under her feet. The shadows seemed to move with her, stretching and shifting. Then, right as she reached the end of the hall, she heard it. The whisper. Clear this time, soft, right behind her, calling her name. Emily stood frozen in the hallway, her heart pounding after hearing her name whispered in the dark. She didn't turn around right away. Instead, she took a deep breath and told herself it was just her imagination. Old houses made sounds. That's what everyone said. Still, something felt different. This wasn't a random noise. It felt personal, like the house knew her. Slowly she turned, shining her flashlight behind her. The hallway was empty, but the air felt thick, as if someone had just been standing there. Over the next few days, strange things continued to happen. Doors creaked open on their own. Lights flickered even when no one touched the switches. And every night, just before Emily fell asleep, she heard soft sounds coming from inside the walls. Not loud, not aggressive, almost gentle. She tried to ignore it, but the sounds always seemed closer to her room, closer to her bed, as if something was slowly learning where she slept. Emily started paying attention to the house during the day. She noticed small details she hadn't seen before. Scratches on the wooden floor, old marks near the doors, and one room at the end of the hall that always felt colder than the others. Even in sunlight, that room felt wrong. The air inside it was still, heavy. Emily avoided it at first, but deep down she felt drawn to it, like the house was quietly inviting her closer. One afternoon, Emily asked her parents about the house. They told her it had belonged to an elderly woman who lived there alone for many years. No one talked much about her. She had no children, no close family, and when she passed away, the house stayed empty for a long time. As Emily listened, she felt a strange sadness. Not fear, sadness. For the first time, she wondered if the voice wasn't trying to scare her, but trying to be heard. That night, Emily didn't run from the whispers. She stayed still and listened. The voice didn't shout. It didn't threaten her. It sounded weak, tired, almost lonely. Emily whispered back, her voice shaking, I can hear you. The house remained silent. But something changed. The heavy feeling lifted just a little, as if whatever was inside the house finally knew. She was listening. Emily lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the old house breathe around her. The whispers had stopped, but the silence felt even heavier. It wasn't the kind of quiet that brought peace. It was the quiet that comes when someone is waiting for you to speak. Emily felt a strange pull inside her chest, a gentle urge pushing her to go back to the cold room at the end of the hall, the one she had avoided since moving in. She didn't know why, but deep down, she sensed the answer to everything was hidden there. So just after midnight, she picked up her flashlight and quietly stepped out of bed. The hallway was colder than usual, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Her bare feet pressed against the wooden floor, each step making a faint creak that echoed far too loudly. Emily kept her flashlight low, lighting the ground instead of the walls. She didn't want the shadows to move in the corner of her eyes again. When she reached the end of the hall, she stopped. The cold room's door was slightly open. Even though she remembered closing it earlier that day, a chill ran through her arms. She pushed the door with the tip of her fingers and stepped inside. The room felt untouched by time. Dust floated gently in the beam of her flashlight, and the air smelled faintly of old books and forgotten stories. There was a small window, but the moonlight hardly reached the center of the room. Emily took a slow breath. She didn't hear anything at first. No whisper, no movement, no signs of life. But then the temperature dropped sharply. Emily's breath became visible, turning into pale white mist. And a soft hum filled the air, almost like someone exhaling after holding their breath for too long. The hum grew slightly louder, forming the shape of a voice. Not clear words yet, but the rhythm of speech. Emily felt no terror this time. Instead, she felt a deep sadness, as if the voice was trying to remember how to speak. She gently whispered, "I'm here, you can talk to me." The room seemed to react. The air trembled faintly, the dust moving in small circles. Then a soft female voice broke through the silence, weak and cracked. "Thank you." Emily's heart jumped. She wasn't imagining it. Something was really trying to reach her. The voice faded again like a candle losing its flame. Emily stepped closer to the center of the room and placed her hand on the floor. It was freezing cold. A memory surfaced in her mind, what her parents told her about the previous owner. Maybe the woman hadn't moved on. Maybe she had been alone for so long that she stayed, trapped between silence and longing. Emily whispered again, "What do you need?" The answer came slowly, broken into pieces as if spoken through years of dust. "Find me." Emily wasn't sure what that meant. Find her? Find what? The room suddenly felt heavier, like the walls were closing in. Her flashlight flickered, lighting the corners of the room in quick flashes. For a split second, Emily saw something, a faint outline of a woman sitting on the floor, head bowed, hands folded in her lap. But when the light steadied, the figure was gone. Emily's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the overwhelming sense of responsibility. Someone was waiting for her, needing her. She stood up and slowly turned, letting the flashlight examine the room. There was an old wardrobe in the corner, its door slightly cracked. Something about it felt important. Emily approached it carefully and pulled the door open. Inside, instead of clothes, there were stacks of dusty boxes and a single wooden chair. And on the chair, a faded photograph. It showed a young woman sitting in the same room, smiling softly at the camera. Emily felt a shock of recognition. It was the same face she saw in the flicker. Emily held the photograph gently, brushing away the dust. On the back, something was written in delicate handwriting. "Don't forget me." Her chest tightened. She understood now. This spirit wasn't haunting the house. She was lost, forgotten, left behind. Emily whispered, "I won't forget you, I promise." The temperature rose slightly, as if the room breathed out in relief. But when Emily turned to leave, the voice returned, stronger this time, urgent. "No, don't go, not yet." Emily stopped, gripping the photograph. "What do you want me to do?" she asked. The lights flickered again, and the voice came clearer than ever before. "Help me remember." Emily didn't fully understand, but she knew she was being asked to stay, to listen, to uncover a story that had been buried in dust and silence. Emily sat on the floor, placing the photograph beside her. The voice hummed softly. like someone trying to gather the strength to speak. Then slowly words began to form. Fragments of memories, names, moments, pieces of a life that had been forgotten by everyone except the house itself. Emily stayed still, patient, listening with her whole heart, and for the first time the spirit didn't sound lonely. She sounded seen, heard, alive again, even if just for a moment. And Emily knew this was only the beginning of what she needed to uncover. The room felt different now, colder, yet strangely calmer, as if the house itself had been waiting for someone brave enough to listen. Emily kept the faded photograph in her hands, brushing her thumb along its edges. The woman in the picture looked peaceful, almost serene. Nothing like the lonely, trembling voice that echoed through the walls. Emily sat on the floor again, determined to understand what the spirit meant by "help me remember." She whispered softly, "I'm here, tell me what you need." The air swirled gently like a quiet sigh, and the voice returned, fragile, fading, reaching. "Remember, my home," the voice whispered. Emily looked around the room. The wooden walls, the old wardrobe, the dust floating like tiny stars in the flashlight's beam. This room must have been important to her. Maybe it was where she spent her final days. Maybe it was where her memories were strongest. Emily stood up and walked toward the wardrobe again, opening it slowly. Inside, she noticed something she hadn't seen before, a small wooden box hidden behind a stack of aging linens. She pulled it out carefully. It was locked. The moment Emily touched the wooden box, the temperature in the room dropped sharply. She could feel the spirit's presence growing stronger, as if the box held something deeply important. She looked around the room, wondering where a key might be. Her flashlight glimmered against the floorboards, revealing tiny scratches and marks near the corner. Kneeling, she tapped the wooden plank. It sounded hollow. Her heart raced. She dug her fingers beneath the edge and slowly lifted the loose board. Underneath the plank was a small iron key wrapped in a piece of fabric. Emily held it gently. The key was cold, almost freezing, as though untouched for decades. She stood, walked to the wooden box, and inserted the key. As she turned it, the room seemed to breathe again. The lock clicked softly, releasing a faint echo. Inside the box, Emily found letters, dozens of them tied with a fragile ribbon, yellowed with age, edges worn but still readable. Love letters. Emily opened the first letter carefully. The handwriting was elegant, deeply emotional. It spoke of longing, of separation, of waiting for someone who never returned. The more she read, the more she understood. These were letters written by the woman, to someone she loved deeply, someone she had lost. Emily felt tears sting her eyes. The voice in the room whispered again, clearer this time. "He never came home." Emily read letter after letter. They told the story of a young woman whose husband had gone away, promising to return. Days turned into months. Months into years. She wrote to him every morning, pouring all her hopes into each page, placing them carefully inside the box. But he never came back. And slowly her world grew smaller, lonelier, colder, until the only place she still existed fully was this room. Emily felt a deep ache in her chest as she placed the letters back inside the wooden box. Now she understood why the spirit lingered. Not out of anger, not out of fear, but out of unfinished love. A love frozen in time. Emily whispered softly, "You don't have to be alone anymore." The voice trembled, full of emotion. "I waited so long." Suddenly the room brightened slightly. The air warmed. Emily felt the presence shift, no longer heavy but lighter, almost hopeful. She placed the wooden box on the chair beside the photograph. For a moment everything was still. Then the photograph glowed faintly, as if touched by moonlight. Emily leaned closer, and for the first time she saw a second figure appear beside the woman in the picture. A man. The man she had waited for. Emily gasped softly, covering her mouth. The image wasn't just a photograph anymore, it felt alive. "Oh!" Complete. The spirit whispered, clearer than ever before. "He found me." Emily felt warmth spread through the room, pushing away the coldness that had clung to the walls since the day she arrived. The floor creaked gently, as if the house itself was finally exhaling after years of silence. Emily closed her eyes and felt something pass through the air, a soft wave of peace, calm and comforting. When she opened them, the room no longer felt haunted. It felt healed. She whispered, "Are you still here?" Silence. Warm silence. Emily smiled faintly. The spirit was gone. Not trapped. Not forgotten. Finally free. Emily gathered the letters, the photograph, and the wooden box and placed them neatly inside the wardrobe. These memories didn't belong in darkness. They belonged in rest. As she closed the wardrobe doors, the house seemed to settle gently, like someone pulling a blanket over themselves for the last time after a long, cold night. Emily stepped back and whispered, "Thank you for trusting me." She walked slowly down the hallway, feeling the floorboards lighter beneath her feet. The shadows no longer stretched aggressively. They simply existed. Normal. Emily glanced back one last time at the cold room. Except it wasn't cold anymore. The air glowed softly, warm and golden, a room full of light. Her parents were asleep, unaware of the extraordinary night that had unfolded. Emily slipped quietly into her own room, clutching the feeling of peace the house now carried. She wrapped herself in her blanket and stared at the ceiling. For the first time since moving in, she wasn't afraid. She felt protected. Connected, part of a story much bigger than herself. The next morning, sunlight filled every corner of the house. Her parents commented on how warm it felt, how alive it seemed. Emily smiled but said nothing. Some stories didn't need to be spoken aloud. Some stories lived quietly in the walls, in the memories, in the hearts of those willing to listen. Emily walked to the end of the hallway one last time. The door to the once cold room stood open, full of light. She whispered goodbye, and in the soft stillness of morning she felt it, a gentle warmth against her cheek. A silent thank you, a story finally complete. And Emily knew, some houses aren't haunted by fear. They're haunted by love waiting to be remembered.